Happy Friday to you, and happy Christmas in June. Did you see what just happened in Texas? I've got a 15-second piece of tape. See if you can tell from watching this 15-second piece of tape what weird thing is going on at this bill signing that just happened down in Texas. You're not looking for something in this clip visually, you're actually listening for something. So check this out.
So I'd like for you to hear from the author of the bill, who happens to also be the father of Reagan, Representative Dwayne Bohack.
Did you hear the ringing? The weird ringing, kind of a seasonal sounding ringing? All right, now here's another clue. Here is Texas Governor Rick Perry signing the bill at that bill ceremony. Everything looks kind of normal, but wait. Who's that guy? Who's that guy over Rick Perry's right shoulder? Who's that guy with the funny hat and the long white beard? Yeah, that's Santa. Rick Perry, in fact, stacked the room with a whole bunch of stunt Santa Clauses for the bill signing. What just happened in Texas is that Rick Perry signed a bill. He had a big ornate signing ceremony with sleigh bells ringing and Santa Clauses all over the room to sign a bill that makes it not illegal to say Merry Christmas in Texas. Seriously.
Well, it might be June, but folks at the state capitol today are getting ready for the holidays.
Today, Governor Perry signed legislation that will let teachers and students use greetings like Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah in schools. Those are members of the Lone Star Santas Club. They came to the Capitol to give their backing on this bill.
Yeah, you can say Merry Christmas in Texas now. Thanks to Governor Rick Perry, it's not illegal to say Merry Christmas. Now, was it ever illegal to say Merry Christmas in Texas? You know, you never can be too careful. But saying Merry Christmas is now doubly, triply, Rick Perry merrily protected in Texas, in case you were ever worried. Rick Perry has been worried about this for a long time. The secret, illegal nature of Christmas is a big Rick Perry idea in politics. You may remember when he was running for president, he tried to make one of the central issues of his campaign the fact that he had led the fight to keep Christmas from being illegal in Texas. And he would lead that fight nationally against President Obama. He wasn't afraid. President Obama may want to make Christmas illegal and ban Christianity, but Rick Perry had Santa on his side.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a Christian, but you don't need to be in the pew every Sunday to know that there's something wrong in this country when gays can serve openly in the military, but our kids can't openly celebrate Christmas or pray in school. As president, I'll end Obama's war on religion, and I'll fight against liberal attacks on our religious heritage. Faith made America strong. It can make her strong again. I'm Rick Perry, and I approve this message.
So that was how Rick Perry ran for president the first time. He will, in his barn coat, protect you from homosexuals. So in case you are worried, America, the one man who will stand between you and homosexuality is this guy. It's Rick Perry receiving and then, of course, famously cuddling a bottle of maple syrup that was given to him in a speech in New Hampshire. Rick Perry will protect you from the gay, and he will keep Christmas legal from the Democrats who want to make it illegal. That is how Rick Perry first ran for president. That's how he ran the first time, and presumably that is how he is going to run for president the second time. And although we are still observing a ban about talking about 2016 here at the Rachel Maddow Show, it is there in my own handwriting on the whiteboard in our offices. One of the ways that you know, despite the 2016 ban, that Rick Perry is definitely running for president again, aside from the fact that Rick Perry himself says he is open to running for president again, one of the ways you know he means it is because that bill signing with the sleigh bells and the Santa Clauses where he saved Christmas, that was among the last things he did in Texas before he left the state to fly to the new Christian Coalition conference thing in Washington. Rick Perry will be speaking tomorrow at the Christian Coalition conference that is hosting all of these other Republicans who want to run for president. The Christian Coalition Conference is now called the Faith and Freedom Conference ever since Ralph Reed sullied the old Christian Coalition name, but it is basically the same old thing that it has always been. It's Ralph Reed and it's Gary Bauer and Phyllis Schlafly and all the rest of them. This confab for the social conservative wing of the Republican Party, it comes at a really sensitive time in our politics when it comes to the issues that have always been nearest and dearest to the hearts of these folks, particularly when it comes to gay politics. By which I mean anti-gay politics, which has always been a central thing that the Christian Coalition and the organized social conservative movement has always stood for. And the sensitive issue for them right now is not just the general American public opinion shift to be in favor of gay rights. The latest ABC News Washington Post poll this week found that 57% of Americans now support legalized equal marriage rights. It's beyond that, though. It's not just that sentiment, that broad feeling in the country that makes their position against it seem awkward. It is that the question is being called. There are policy positions coming up, policy decisions coming up on this, where Republicans are going to have to make their feelings known, not just to each other, but to the majority of the country which disagrees with them on gay rights. Republican politicians are about to lose the luxury of only talking about gay rights in front of anti-gay audiences like the Faith and Freedom Coalition, or avoiding the question altogether because they really don't want to be quoted about it because their Republican position on the subject is so unpopular. One of these policy decisions that's about to come down on them is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It's a bill that simply says you can't be fired for being gay. No employer can put up a sign in their window that says, "We don't hire gay people." It is legal for an employer to do that right now under federal law. You can't do something like that on the basis of race, of course. You can't do that on the basis of sex. You can't do that on the basis of age and all of these other protected categories. But if you want to fire somebody simply and open and only because they are gay, if you want to put out a job announcement that says, "I will not hire you if you are gay, no gays need apply," nothing in federal law stops you from doing that. Today, the non-discrimination bill that would fix that got its 50th sponsor in the Senate in the form of Majority Leader Harry Reid. And that means that the non-discrimination bill now has enough votes to pass if the Republicans wouldn't filibuster it, which of course they would. Republican presidential hopeful Marco Rubio was asked about his position on that non-discrimination bill yesterday by an enterprising Think Progress reporter who followed him into an elevator.
The Senate this summer is going to be taking up the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which makes it illegal to fire someone for being gay. Do you know if you'll be supporting that?
I haven't read the legislation, but by and large, I think all Americans should be protected, but I'm not for any special protections based on orientation.
What about on race or gender?
Well, that's established law.
But not for sexual orientation?
Hi, how are you, man?
Hey, how are you, man? That counts as not an answer. It's kind of brutal to watch the, running away. Not for sexual orientation, even though that's not the, hey, how are you? No, it's tough to watch. But Marco Rubio being anti-gay, Marco Rubio having anti-gay policy positions is not a surprise. He has never taken a pro-gay rights position on anything, really. And it was just yesterday that he said he would blow up the whole immigration reform issue. He would blow up this whole thing that he has been working on, that he has staked his whole political future on. He will kill the whole idea of immigration reform if immigration reform applies to gay people too.
This bill has in it something that gives, gay couples immigration rights and so forth. It kills the bill. I'm gone. I'm off it, and I've said that repeatedly. And I don't think that's going to happen, and it shouldn't happen.
I'm gone. I'm off it. That shouldn't happen. So Marco Rubio, the supposed future of the Republican Party, says there should be no immigration reform if it also would apply to gay people. And he says it should be legal in this country for your boss to fire you because he found out you're gay, or because he's decided he thinks that you're gay. Maybe nothing should be surprising about social conservative politics and what these guys stand for still in 2013. But the non-discrimination thing, right? I mean, you would think that would be something where they could bring more people across the line on this. I mean, the reason that Harry Reid is number 50 in terms of sponsoring the Non-Discrimination Act is because the 48th and 49th votes for the non-discrimination bill just happened. Those were from Angus King, who's sort of right down the middle, centrist, independent senator from Maine. Also from Heidi Heitkamp, who's probably the most conservative member of the Senate now, who is a Democrat. Heidi Heitkamp, for example, voted against background checks for gun sales. And she's a very conservative person on lots of social issues, but even she is for non-discrimination. But when it comes to the Republicans, not only is Marco Rubio not in favor of it, it's not even the province of Rob Portman. Rob Portman is the guy who decided he was suddenly for gay marriage after his son came out to him. So he is okay for marriage rights for his son, but not for non-discrimination. I'm okay with you being forced out of your job, son, because of who you are. I just don't want you to go through it alone. If you're married, you could both be fired for being gay together. I mean, how does that make sense? These maverick Republicans that you see on your screen right here, these are the only 3 Republicans in both houses of Congress who support employment non-discrimination for gay people. And while all of those members of Congress are Republicans in good standing, what you are not looking at there is the Republican primary field for 2016. You apparently cannot support something like non-discrimination for gay people and have any future in Republican Party politics. Nobody who has any real prospects of being a national leader in Republican politics in the next few years has anything other than a 100% anti-gay policy position on something like non-discrimination. That is apparently still a requirement if you are a Republican and you want to hold higher national office. And that is awkward, given that the country as a whole is in a really, really different place than that. And there is a very good chance that this coming Monday, that very awkwardness is all going to come crashing down on the Republican Party. Because this Monday, there's no guarantees, nobody knows for sure, but many court observers are expecting that this Monday morning, the United States Supreme Court will issue a pair of high-profile rulings on the issue of same-sex marriage. The court is expected to rule on the constitutionality of California's ban on same-sex marriage, otherwise known as Prop 8, and we also expect a ruling from the court on DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which is the law passed by Congress and signed by Bill Clinton. It's an anti-gay law that denies same-sex couples any federal recognition and any of the federal benefits of being married. The Supreme Court heard arguments on both of those cases in March. This Monday is the next possible day that we could get final rulings from them on those cases, and a lot of people are expecting those cases to be ruled on Monday. And those looming rulings are a problem for Republicans who find themselves on the wrong side of fast-moving public opinion on this issue. By which I mean almost all elected Republicans. Because in Republican world, it is a very different world than the rest of us live in when it comes to talking about the gay. As an example, this week, as the court is gearing up to issue those rulings and as 50 co-sponsors are signing on to the Non-Discrimination Act, Republicans in Congress were being lobbied by all the social conservatives who were in town for Ralph Reed's new version of the Christian Coalition and their big conference. Republicans in Congress spent this week getting lobbied on the evils of gay marriage and the darkness that will be unleashed on the land if the court rules in a pro-gay way. This was a Republican congressman from Ohio being visited by that group yesterday. Watch this.
If the court shelves DOMA and steps on the voice of the people of California, that will radically change the definition of marriage, which will, I think, probably unleash the sort of civil protests that's reminiscent of the civil rights movement in the 50s, 60s.
It's going to be the mass civil disobedience of the 1950s and 1960s all over again. If the court rules in favor of gay marriage, the nation will rise up in anger and the streets will fill for years. Really? The problem for Republicans is that after these rulings come out, they are not just going to be able to talk to the Ken Blackwells of the world and the Ralph Reeds and Phyllis Schlafly's of the world about it, and the people who cheer them in speeches when they call it sodomy, right? After these rulings come out, this is going to be the biggest news in the country, and they are going to have to talk to the rest of the country, too, who is increasingly not only against them on these issues, but bewildered by them and their positions on these issues. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen on Monday, but this is going to be fascinating to watch.
I am today an out lesbian, okay, who just sued the United States of America, which is kind of overwhelming for me. When my beautiful, sparkling Thea died 4 years ago, I was overcome with grief. Within a month, I was hospitalized with a heart attack, and that's kind of common. It's usually looked at as broken heart syndrome. In the midst of my grief, I realized that the federal government was treating us as strangers, and I paid a humongous estate tax. And it meant selling a lot of stuff to do it, and it wasn't easy. I live on a fixed income, and it wasn't easy.
That was octogenarian Edie Windsor, the plaintiff in the Defense of Marriage Act case before the Supreme Court right now. A lot of very practiced court watchers think that a ruling on that case and on the Prop 8 case in California may be announced on Monday. It is not at all certain if it will happen then or what that ruling will be. But joining us now with probably the best guess in the country is Tom Goldstein. He's co-founder of the SCOTUS blog, a website that covers the Supreme Court that won a Peabody Award in Excellence in Electronic Media this year. The first blog to win that award. Mr. Goldstein also lectures lectures at Harvard, and he has argued 28 cases before the Supreme Court. Tom Goldstein, thank you so much for being with us.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And thanks to Governor Perry for letting me get that off my chest.
Yeah, I know you've been held back by the threat of the Gestapo, right? Listen, Tom, there's no way to know if Monday is going to be the day. But what is your thinking about whether or not it's going to be the day?
I think this one probably will go to the bitter end. The justices heard argument just as you described it in March. They don't give us any heads up, but it's likely to be such a big fight, particularly when you have two cases on such a historic question as same-sex marriage, that sometime in the next 2 weeks it's going to happen, but Monday might be a little ambitious, but it could happen for sure.
What do you expect to be the outcome of these cases, and do you expect that they will both be decided at the same time, that we'll hear about both rulings on the same day?
Yeah, I'd be shocked. They are twins in a sense. They present a question about a federal law being unconstitutional and a state law, some of the same theories, that it violates equal protection to discriminate between same-sex couples and heterosexual couples. So it would be the court's practice to do it together. In terms of what's going to happen, I would guess there's going to be a split result that, just as you described, puts it back into the national conversation. First and foremost, I think DOMA is going to be struck down, either on this theory that it violates the rights of same-sex couples, or that it violates the state's rights, that if a state wants to recognize same-sex marriage, I think Justice Kennedy, our center vote, is really sympathetic to the idea that Congress can't overturn that judgment. Proposition 8, it asks this very conservative Supreme Court, our most conservative Supreme Court ever, a lot to recognize a right to same-sex marriage. It looked like the center of the court was looking for some way out of deciding that question.
They could do that by saying we shouldn't have taken this in the first place, or by deciding it on some technical ground that avoided the merits?
Exactly right. To say that maybe these plaintiffs didn't have the right to appeal because everybody who is responsible for enforcing these laws is giving up on them. The president says that DOMA is unconstitutional. The governor in California refuses to defend Proposition 8. That wave of national attitude that you've been describing applies to the elected officials as well. And that might, ironically, give the Supreme Court a way of kicking that critical, fundamental question down the road while still advancing the ball through the DOMA case.
I'm going to be a bit of a heretic and talk about the justices as political people for a second. I know they don't like to be talked about that way, but I do tend to think of especially the younger, more conservative justices as being very politically minded. Justice Roberts, in particular, as a young chief, thinking about how he is viewed. And when I think of him as a political figure, I think about him worrying about how his fellow conservatives might think about his ruling on Obamacare. And maybe he doesn't want to be seen as a squish. Maybe he wants to be seen as a conservative. If I extrapolate, I'm making that up, but if I extrapolate from that, I would think that he does not want a 5-4 ruling where he's on the side of 5 voting for gay marriage. I would think that he wants a larger ruling than that. He wants it to be 6, 7, 8, 9 votes in favor. Am I crazy to be thinking about it in those terms?
Well, I don't think you have to even think about it as just political. You can think about it as somebody who really cares a lot about the perception of the institution. And I don't think he sweats things a lot. That's the nice thing about life tenure. But in all events, it's really odd to think that he would be the 5th vote. Justice Kennedy, who's written 2 very significant cases on gay rights, who is really the person who same-sex marriage advocates here are looking to first and foremost among the court's conservatives, he would have to be the 5th vote, and then the chief would be the 6th vote, almost certainly.
In terms of the other rulings, the other big rulings that are expected from the court soon, obviously the other one that everybody's really on tenterhooks about is the Voting Rights Act. Do you have any other informed speculation for us on either timing or likely outcomes there?
That one is probably up sooner. It was argued beforehand. This is the question of whether Section 5, a really historic provision of the Voting Rights Act, which says that covered jurisdictions who have a history of discrimination dating back to the 1960s have to get the permission of the Department of Justice or a court before changing their voting systems. The idea being that they would just keep moving into new forms of discrimination if they always had to be sued. And this court, a few years ago, really sent a shot across the bow of that law to Congress and said, you need to narrow it, you need to cut back the number of covered jurisdictions. And Congress didn't do anything, and the justices do not like it when it seems like the other branches of government aren't paying attention. And so that statute, I think, is probably in big trouble, although by a thin majority.
Tom Goldstein, co-founder of SCOTUS blog. Tom, thank you very much for your time tonight. You always make these things both clear and scary. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. With the Voting Rights Act, with Section 5, that is just a backbone civil rights protection. And if that goes, and most informed people on these matters seem to think that it's going to be going, I have no idea what the political repercussions of that are going to be, but it's going to be a very big deal in this country in a way that's going to last for a very long time. So think I. We'll be right back.